Okay guys, today I'm doing Venus in Virgo in the 6th house, and I'm just going to run through some slides and explain it to you. So what we have is that Venus has an inner nature and an outer nature, and it's the way we hear our own voice and listen, and we hear ourselves, our inner talk, and then we project that out into the world, and then we see what gets reflected back to us as adults. We've got inner needs and values, that's what Venus is, and we've got Mercury rules Virgo and the 6th house. So you can look where that is in your chart. If you have Venus in Virgo, it's also going to be the house you're going to be looking at as well as where Virgo is. So the big question, how do I talk to myself? We all have conditioning from childhood and society to some degree, but at some point we've got to look at how we do talk to ourselves, because our inner talk does run our lives to a large degree. And also we've got the right brain, which is our creative side, and the left brain, which is our analytical, and we need to integrate both. And next slide is my chart. What I'm going to show you is, you can see here, if you can see my mouse moving, this chart is dated the 14th of July gone, and we do have that my Venus is at 18 degrees Aries in the 5th house, which is also Leo. So that's our love nature, the way we go about getting what we want and our needs met. And so for me, you know, I've got the Aries is actually the 1st house traditionally, and Leo is the sun, it's shining, it's creativity, children, and such like. So we can begin to dig deep on charts and, you know, look at how we bring it all together. We're not just looking at one thing. The next thing we have is that a natal chart represents our potential, and it also represents what we have been, and we can see where we've been and where we're at and what we can become. We all do have free will, and knowing this means we get to make choices, which is really important in astrology, not to just assume that everything, you know, is just written in stone. It's like we play with what's going on, the energies that we're working with. It's important we look at the totality of a chart. And in evolutionary astrology, the baseline used will be Pluto and the node, North Node and the South Node, and the polarity of Pluto as well. So here we have Venus in Virgo. The ruler is Venus. No, it isn't actually, sorry. Is it? It's Mercury. So what we have is, here we have a pattern that is inward and self-analytical and self-critical. And this is about personal self-improvement. Its focus is on what is wrong and to where we need to, you know, look at ourselves to adjust. The not feeling right and self-worth of not feeling good enough, it can show guilt and the belief that we need to atone. So that can show up. It can, you know, that Virgo, we can feel a lot of guilt, but why we need to atone. When we believe we need to improve, where we do, and where guilt becomes judgment, because, you know, a lot of guilt is put on people and a lot of emotions are quite normal, and also society can put guilt on us, and then it becomes self-judgment as well. We've really got to watch for that. And the Venus in Virgo can have beliefs and be rigid about what it is correct and what is right and wrong. It is to do with being moral, and it is religious in nature. This gives the idea that we are less than perfect and that only God is perfect. This is how Venus in Virgo relates to themselves inwardly and outwardly. This can feel lonely, and an emptiness can be experienced. This is where we may feel small and not worthy, and we feel others are better and we are nothing in comparison. These thoughts of not being good enough humiliate us because we believe we will never be what we should be. And these beliefs apply to others mean they are then mirrored back to us. This is masochism and crucifixion of the self. The inner and outer realities match up. The good news is analysis can lead to self-knowledge, which can change that. So this is Venus. I just wanted to go back to that. Venus in Virgo, and the ruler is actually Mercury up there. So don't take that bit in. That was a typo error there. Then what we have is that it is awareness of what is going on that I can see is needed here. As with all of the archetypes, whatever our inner voice is doing then gets mirrored back to us. When we do not feel deserving, we do not meet our own needs, and this also leads to guilt, shame, and judgment. If we do not understand this dynamic, we will disassociate and avoid confronting the depths of loneliness in us. being overly busy, superficial thinking, and superficial nonsense. This leads to one crisis after another, and each crisis can keep us in a loop, and this means more avoidance of what needs to be addressed. The avoidance can be through food, alcohol, or other sexual addictions to get out of their heads and experience the body. There is an inner doubt. Too many conflicting thoughts can lead us to staying stuck in a loop of going round nowhere, and this deepens the thoughts, I am not good enough. And the way around this is to take one step at a time, and here is the quality of being a natural giver before taking care of self and giving great advice but not taking one's own advice. Believing they do not deserve help but hurt. All this attracts others who can invalidate them and criticize them. So we can balance this out here. We can balance this with the polarity of Pisces to help understand the depth of inner aloneness, aligning with a spiritual practice to establish a connection with a higher power of God or God. This can help dissolve loneliness, to embrace compassion and gentleness and love, and to see life as evolving instead of fixed and perfect. Changing our inner standards dissolves inner guilt and leads to acceptance of self, which leads to positive feelings and new self-talk. So this is really interesting. I've been reading a book recently called Trauma and the Soul, and it's talking about this, you know, the right brain and the left brain, and how we need to integrate and really look at, you know, the right brain's going to be the poetry, the music, the bigger picture, our dreams and hopes and desires, and the analytical side. So we have to balance that out somehow and not be just one way. Here, I love this. This is Uganda, and he says, mankind is engaged in an internal quest for that something else he hopes will bring him happiness, complete and unending. And for those individual souls who have sought and found God, the search is over. He is that something else. And what we'll find is, as human beings, we'll bounce around with that. Like sometimes, you know, we feel a deep connection with something that we call God. It's going to be different for everybody. It's a subjective experience, what God is, a numinous experience, a spiritual experience. We can have them throughout our life. And again, that's very right brain. And I think the whole point of coming back to source is that coming back to self and realizing that many of our desires can be met internally as well, and that there is no separation. And this slide, I love Carl Gustav Jung, and I read a lot of his work. He passed in 1961, and he's to do with psychoanalysis. If people don't know who Carl Jung is, he was friends with Freud, but they had different ways of thinking. And I think that Freud was more analytical, and Carl Gustav Jung, you know, took both parts to the, you know, there was no separation in the brain of the spiritual side of us and the analytical side of us. And until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So part of our life of becoming whole is making the unconscious conscious in us. And what you resist not only persists, but it will grow in size. So resisting what we need to work on or to evolve in ourselves will come through, you know, making the unconscious conscious as well. And resistance determines the magnitude of our problems or confrontations. So there's no point in resisting what we need to deal with, you know. It's really important that we look at where we resist. And the source material here is Jeff Wolf Green, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul. You can get that on Amazon. And the various quotes by Carl Jung and Uganda, and the pictures I got from Google. And lastly, if you want me to read your natal chart with you and transits, you can send me an email here. I'm doing an offer till the end of August, so look at the link below this video so that you'll be able to see how you can arrange that. You need your time, date and place of birth, and time is important to know where the planet's for. And that's it. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week with Libra. Catch you later.